92% of GDP growth in the first half of the year was as a result of data center buildouts and AI investments, which means if you take out AI and data center investments, the economy is in a recession. There were 585,000 tech companies in the US in 2023, and in 2025, there's 702,000. But the labor market for technology companies has been flat or slightly declined.
The bar is rising so quickly that most people will probably find it difficult to compete with AI. There was always going to be a job for the top 5% of people. Do you agree with that?
That's what I mean by drivers versus passengers. AI is not going to replace your job, but somebody that knows how to use AI will replace your job. There's a level of ingenuity, creativity that is present in people. They're drivers. And then there's a group of people that are still fundamentally waiting to be told what to do. Those people are in trouble.
I don't have a set agenda, Sam. I kind of thought like we should catch up because I think the last time I saw you in person was about 2 years ago, maybe.
Weren't you working at Crossbeam?
It was when we did the ecosystem-led growth.
And it was right. GTM EMEA, our European conference, was right on the back of Crossbeam.
Correct.
So
That's
that was
right.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
2023.
2023.
I don't like to remember 2023.
Why is that?
Not a great year. It was a turning point year, but not a great year. But it was like the year that all the work happened.
And do you mean turning point for Pavilion, for yourself, or is it more
My
for...
personal and professional lives are directly correlated and intertwined.
Okay.
So it was both.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to unpack this a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I'll talk about anything.
One thing, on that note, one thing that I remember, the big theme at the time, obviously end of 22, going to 23, was this notion of efficiency and doing more with less, right?
Yeah.
That was kind of the big theme. It seemed that, we're still kind of on that theme, but also not really. And I can see you shaking your head. What is your observation here?
On where we are?
Yeah, in terms of how quickly we have departed from this idea of being more efficient. Are we still trying to be more efficient, or are we
I think there's two. The short answer is yes. I think there's two worlds. There's a world of AI first, AI-led companies. And I think those companies are not trying to be efficient. And the most prominent example of that is Replit having negative gross margins. So for every dollar that Replit sells, they lose 36 cents, which, that's that's a new take on business. So there's a series of AI companies that are growing very quickly, or at least for now they're growing very quickly. And I think that they are not pursuing any kind of efficiency. They're just trying to grab as much market share, mind share, habit forming as possible.
Yeah.
And then I think there's everybody else, and everybody else, I think, is in a very difficult spot. And I think, I think GDP is growing 3% year over year, which is actually pretty good GDP growth for the U.S.
Yeah.
But it's so concentrated in a small number of companies. The 92% of GDP growth in the first half of the year was as a result of data center buildouts and AI investments, which means if you take out AI and data center investments and, NVIDIA and OpenAI and all of these strange deals that they're doing, the economy is in a recession.
Yeah.
And the labor market is not moving. So I think it's actually it's not a great place to be. And I think a lot of the people in our ecosystem are struggling, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I think we're in a world of efficiency. Not even that. I think we're in a world where growth is very, very difficult to come by. And I think that, I'm dropping a lot of stats that you might, hear or see from me in other places. But there were 585,000 tech companies in the U.S. in 2023, and in 2025, there's 702,000. But the labor market for technology companies has been flat or slightly declined. So what that means is there are lots and lots of small companies that are vying for all of our attention. And the supply and demand imbalance means that there's a lot of companies, the mandate for what is a great product has increased. And the consequence of that is that a lot of companies that felt like they had product market fit no longer have product market fit. And the consequence of that is that, but they're all scrambling to get your and my attention and everybody else's attention. So customer acquisition cost is going up, which is just a sort of fancy way of saying that it's harder and harder to get our attention. The bar for excellence is higher. And a lot of our friends that are go-to-market operators are struggling in that reality.
Yeah.
And so, I launched this. We can talk, and we will. I'm sure we will talk about the history of Pavilion and where we are.
Yeah,
and all
totally.
The roller coaster and all the security of the route that led us here. But I launched this thing called Pavilion Gold 6 months ago, and we're recording this in the middle of November.
Mm-hmm.
And that was for operators at companies that are 100 million and above in revenue, not value, revenue. And the idea was partially that Pavilion is a community for go-to-market operators, but had skewed heavily towards early stage.
Yeah.
And I wanted a place to work with the best operators in tech. I had thought that, and I also candidly wanted to try a more premium experience. And, we haven't changed pricing at Pavilion in 4 years.
Oh, wow.
So if you compare that to inflation,
Yeah.
that means that we've been lowering prices every year. Yeah. So I wanted something that felt like it was priced around value. So it's currently $12,000 a year, and it'll go up to $18,000.
That's the gold membership.
Yeah, it's the gold membership.
Okay.
But that's all. The point of what I'm saying is these are supposed to be the best of the best, and these are supposed to be people at scale.
Yeah.
And I don't know that it's necessarily correlative, but I thought it would correlate to job security. And there's about 35 people in the program, and of that 35, about a third in 6 months have been fired or changed jobs.
Wow.
So there's public company executives in there. There are people that have raised $1 billion, the most famous companies that you've heard of, and there's no job security at all.
So what do you attribute that to? Is it the proverbial AI is coming to take out your job, or do you think it's still trimming the fat from the ZERP era, or is it something in the middle?
I think the world is more volatile. I mean, I sound, like a cliche or maybe like Ray Kurzweil or something, but I think the world is more volatile every day than it was the previous day. And I think that as a result, nobody has any certainty about what's going to happen in the future. And as a result of that, there is no security around the roles and the jobs to be done that all of us have to accomplish. And there's far less patience as well. But also, there's so much competition for our attention that growth is actually quite difficult. Again, except if you're Google / Alphabet, if you're NVIDIA, if you're maybe AMD, like if you make chips, or if you're OpenAI or Anthropic, you're doing great. But many, many other organizations are struggling to find growth. But I think the underlying thing, is just that there's just so much uncertainty. And I think, you can look at your and my lives and confirm that.
Yeah.
There's uncertainty around our domestic economies. There's uncertainty around the political environment. There's uncertainty around immigration and the constitution of the workforce.
Yeah.
Every new administration in the United States has radically different policy views. So, the American president promises something in 2021, and it's completely invalidated in 2024. It makes it very hard to do deals. And I think all of that flows through to this dramatic insecurity within the labor force at every level.
Yeah.
So
it kind of cascades down all the way from the top.
I think so.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I don't know. I think it makes sense. And I think I totally agree with this idea that it seems like every single morning you wake up to a different world, which makes it incredibly difficult to operate. Again, I think for as long as I could remember, if you were a GTM operator, it was always about deploying a playbook. At least most people. So like, I join a company at a certain ARR bracket and I know the playbook to deploy and I do it and it takes us from A to B. And now it seems, to your point, number one, those playbooks don't really work, but also you don't know what kind of world you're walking into on a daily basis, let alone, this financial year we're going to do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
It just seems wild.
It does seem wild. And I think, again, the playbook not working is a different way of saying that the world is so much more competitive. So I was at a dinner last night for Pavilion and outbound works for some people and SDR still work for some people and certain kinds of emails still work for some people. It's just in it's in industries where they hadn't existed before. So you're deploying the old playbook into a new industry that's only coming online or sort of slower to adopt new technology. Or it's a product that's so great that people are talking about it and and the market is pulling it forward. But for everybody else, it's just very, very difficult. And there's just a lot of people that don't. I'm thinking about this idea of drivers versus passengers. And I'm sure there's some business book that I'm, inadvertently paraphrasing or
I cannot think
plagiarizing.
Of it. Go ahead.
But I just think we're in a world where there's too many passengers and not enough drivers. And you can say, what is my point? My point is like, there's a lot of people running dumb playbooks. There's a lot of marketers that are putting dumb things on the website. Or I have a podcast and I read ad copy that is written by, I guess, product marketers. And it's like, you don't even know what the hell they're saying, right? And there's lots of those people. There's lots of people that are putting boring, vapid, generic messaging out into the world because they were never taught otherwise. So I just think the bar for excellence is raised.
Do you see then that competitiveness as uncertainty as almost like a self-cleansing mechanism where only the top, say, 5% of the workforce stays afloat? I had a guest on the podcast called Philip Su.
Yeah.
Philip is a very decorated engineer and software leader. And most recently, he built the OpenAI office in Seattle, where he was saying the bar is rising so quickly that most people will probably find it difficult to compete with AI or people who are deploying AI in a smart way. But he was saying there was always going to be a job for the top 5% or so of people. Do you agree that? Do you see that kind of translating into the GTM space as well?
I do. And I that's what I mean by drivers versus passengers.
Okay.
That is my, that is another frame on, AI is not going to replace your job, but somebody that knows how to use AI will replace your job.
Yeah.
There's a level of ingenuity, creativity, entrepreneurialism, urgency, motive force that is present in people. And frankly, it's present in you. And a group of people that we all know, and we know those people when we meet them. They're drivers. And then there's a group of people that are still fundamentally waiting to be told what to do. And I think those people are in trouble.
Why do you think that is? Obviously, you kind of sit at a very unique spot and you have a sort of a bird's eye view of the ecosystem. So I guess you speak to a lot of go-to-market leaders across multiple geographies, multiple countries, multiple industries. So are you able to see, any commonalities between the so-called drivers and the passengers? Do you know what makes a driver versus a passenger?
I think it's all of the qualities that we've all talked about for our entire professional lives. I just think I think there's so much more competition that the demand is more acute.
Right.
And so, what are the differences? Well, some people are curious. Some people are not curious. Some people read books. Some people don't read books. Some people try to get better in their spare time. Some people don't try to get better in their spare time. Some people are committed to whatever strange athletic contest that you've been decommissioned from over the past month. And some people don't, and some people have curiosity. There's this phrase, you can't put in what God left out. So I don't know that I'm capable of inputting motivation or inputting curiosity, but I'm telling you that I continue to work with people and encounter people and talk to people, and fundamentally like I said, they're just sort of waiting. And I don't know why, And so how does it manifest itself? You go into a meeting, and you find that you're doing all the talking, and they're not. And their perspective is, maybe like the CEO is crazy, the CEO has shiny object syndrome.
Yeah.
They don't understand that might be true, but also, I wouldn't be talking if I felt like you were talking. I don't want to bring my ideas. I want to respond to your ideas. But if you're not going to bring any ideas, then I have to bring my own. And I think there's still a group of people that feel like their job is to comment on what's happening as observers.
Right.
It's the difference I always say within Pavilion, at the company Pavilion. We're not news reporters. I don't need you to observe and say agreed or disagree. We make the news. We make the news. We have
100%.
to make the news. We are the subject of the news. We are not, AP.
Yeah. This is probably a good segue of talking about Pavilion a little bit, because I think what you just said very accurately captures what Pavilion has become, at least in the go-to-market space. I kind of felt for the last, probably more than 5 years now, Pavilion has been making the news. And a large part of it has been purely down to the scale and also the quality of the people that are actually in the community, but the scale itself is kind of mind-boggling. I think you've got over 10,000 people.
About 10,000.
And so one thing that I have always looked at is to begin with your monthly reports and then quarterly reports and then the B2B SaaS benchmarks that you do with Epster, whatever Epster called now, Fullcast.
Yeah.
But, for the past 5 years, I would say that has been to me the barometer, if you will, of what is happening in the go-to-market space. And it actually quite accurately reflects ahead of time what is going to happen with the economy as well. So so I guess, the question here is, how did you come to be that barometer, right? I think many people look at you now. By the way, shockingly, I looked at your LinkedIn profile this morning and I realized you have 120,000 followers on LinkedIn. So firstly, when did that happen? But, I think a lot of people are looking at you thinking, oh, this is Sam, he has always been that way, but they don't necessarily know the Sam that I know from 10 years ago when you kind of started in this journey.
Yeah.
So it'd be good to actually talk a little bit about this and give some context as to how you ended up here.
Sure.
And then maybe we can go into where this is going.
Sure. How did I end up here? You've heard this story many times in some form. I like it trained. I haven't been trained, but it sounds better. I'm a trained go-to-market operator. I was a CRO. I was working at startups from 2003 to 2018, and exactly to the point of the anecdote I shared with you earlier, I had this assumption that as I became more senior, I worked at this one very successful place called GLG from 2003 to 2010, and that company went from 25 million in ARR, and we didn't have words for any of these things then. I didn't know what ARR was, but I knew that we were making a shitload of money. So we went from 25 million to 300 million in revenue, and I had no frame, so I thought this was normal. And everybody that worked at GLG worked there a long time, and they didn't actually do a bunch of layoffs, and they weren't aggressive performance managers. They sort of just made you feel lonely, and then you'd quit. But most of the time, people worked there a long time. So I had this idea that I would come out of GLG, and I was ready to become like a senior executive, and I would do a bunch of 6, 7, 8 year runs, and that would culminate in being very wealthy and having had this huge impact. Maybe I'd be a CEO one day. And that was precisely the opposite of what happened. And so I went from 7.5 years at GLG to 4.5 years at a place called Axial. And that was, I didn't really have frames for this, but it was effectively pre-revenue when I joined, and we got it to about 10 million in ARR. And I was fired. And I was fired for good reason, so we can go into that. And I was fired from GLG too, to be clear. We can talk about the mechanisms and the ways, because there's today's your last day, which is different from it's not working, let's figure out a transition path. It was a transition path in GLG. It was, hey, you can't come back to the office at Axial. Then I went to Livestream, and I worked there for 18 months. So 7.5 years, 4.5 years, 18 months. Then I wasn't fired from Livestream, but I chose to leave because I thought they were going to run out of money. They didn't run out of money. They sold to Vimeo, but I didn't exercise my option, so that was terrible. Then I went to work at the Muse for 9 months as Chief Revenue Officer, then Behavevox for 10 months, and that's when we met because I was in London a lot in 2018.
And I could reach out to you.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so my stint kept getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And I realized it wasn't just me. And I realized I felt on the outside of these power structures, if I have to be a little bit more introspective than just the simple story that I tend to tell. That part of it is this outsider feeling that I have inside of me, but also I was feeling at these companies that I felt like the structure of the organization was designed to fulfill the needs of the founder and CEO and of the board. And then the rest of us were essentially expendable and disposable, as I was disposed regularly. And so that pissed me off, and I wanted to start a club. And it was funny because, again, I haven't shared this with anybody else, Dim, but I was reading the book The Power Broker about Robert Moses, and love him or hate him, he was Jewish, and when he was at Yale, there was a bunch of clubs he couldn't join, and so he started his own club that nobody else could join because he wanted to be at the center of something as opposed to always feeling on the outside of something, and that's how I felt. Walking every day from the Bushwick, from the train station in Bushwick to go to Livestream. So I wanted to start a club that other people couldn't join, especially founders and CEOs and investors, because I was tired of them. And I was tired of what I perceived to be, trust fund kids or Nepo babies lecturing me about how great they were when they were born on third base and thought they hit a triple. Yeah. These are American metaphors.
But no, I get
it. So I wanted to start my own club of outcasts, and I felt like that was all of the people that work for the CEO that were not the CEO.
Yeah.
So that's what it was. It was never intended to be a business. The first thing it was I'm going to get a bunch of people together and we're going to eat dinner every quarter. Then Max asked me to host the Sales Hacker podcast, and Max Altshuler had distribution, so people heard it. And one of the people that heard it was our friend Tom Glasson, and another person that heard it was Andre Brussel in Amsterdam, and they reached out to me and said, I hear what you're doing in New York. It's called Revenue Collective. We want to do it in our city. And so pretty soon, and I was coming to London all the time in 2018, we had these clubs in different places. It went from being free, then I said I need a side hustle. I need, maybe I'm a fractional. We didn't have that word back then.
Yep.
So I started charging for it, and it started to grow. And then it really took off when I worked on it full-time in 2018 at the end, and we started opening chapters all over the world, and it blossomed, and it particularly grew during COVID when everybody needed community. And then and there's been a lot of ups and downs, and candidly, from late 22, early 23 to really, like in some ways, September of 25, it's been kind of down. It may not appear that, but that's and it's going to be up in 26 and 27 and 28. And
how do you define down, by the way, Sam? Is it in terms of revenue?
Growth has slowed.
But how do you define growth? Is it revenue or is it...
Revenue. Revenue.
Okay, revenue. So
revenue.
Not necessarily members count.
Member count's
correlate.
Flat.
Okay.
Churn. We used to have churn at all.
Right. Yeah.
Now we are a B2C.
Yeah.
We are, a not great B2C business. I can talk about that.
I don't want to kind of sidetrack you from this story because it's awesome. But one thing that you mentioned.
Sidetrack me.
Okay. Well, so I remember. So I was one of the very first people to join.
Really were.
Yeah, in London, and you were saying how it was a very exclusive community. And one thing that I remember, which I thought was really cool at the time. So I was, I think, one of the original 6 that started it. But if you want to, with Tom, so Tom invited me to the first meeting.
Yeah.
But thereafter, if you wanted to join, you had to be referred by, I think it was two people from the original 6. So it grew very slowly, but the bar was really, really high in terms of who joined.
Yep.
And it did make it feel very exclusive. It did make it feel like everyone who was there belonged, which I think, that was something that, I haven't quite thought about, but I think now that you're kind of explaining it, I feel like, oh yeah, that definitely was the case with me and so many others, right? And then at some point, I think the community just grew so much, which is a good thing, but obviously has perhaps unintended consequences. So I wonder whether, the things that you saw in terms of flattening, revenue and everything else is on the back of that crazy growth that you saw, I don't know, from 2020, I guess, COVID you mentioned.
The most growth happened from 2019 to 2022.
Right. So I wonder if, at some point there are only so many leaders.
Oh, no, that's not the case.
That's not the case. So what do you think happened there then?
I know exactly what happened.
Please, yeah.
You cannot have an exclusive club that everybody can sign up for online.
Okay.
It's just that simple.
Yeah.
And at some point in 2022, we raised money, and I wasn't intending to raise money. And I don't blame the investors because they don't control the business. They don't control the board. I control the company. I own the majority of the company. It is not... I just really wanted to make the money.
Yeah.
That I wanted to grow for them. They didn't push me to do anything. But at some point, in about the fall of 22, we used to have this process where if you were applied and you qualified, you would write, you would say fast track in your application, and we would just sign you up and take your money. And at some point, we shifted that to just making it strictly e-commerce. You could just join by signing up online.
I didn't even know you could do that.
It wasn't good.
Okay.
And so who joined? Well, every kind of person that previously couldn't join. We never used to allow consultants. We didn't allow executive search firms. We didn't allow CEOs. We didn't allow anybody that hadn't achieved a VP title or above. And beginning in the late 22, you could. And also, in a spirit, in the sort of the road to hell is paved with good intentions, we began offering a 50% discount to people that had been laid off or were out of work.
I mean, that's very kind, and this is very you, I would say, kind folks, right? But I guess
so the balance of the community became imbalanced. So what do people... I'm being a little critical because, I went to a dinner last night. Like, we've done tremendously good work. We've helped thousands of people, and I can give so many different examples. But the balance of the community shifted, and a lot of transactional people joined that wanted to sell go-to-market tech or sell their services or sell their consulting or sell their RevOps, fractional, whatever, back into the community. And it became less exclusive. But exclusivity isn't the point of it. It became less homogenous. And it became less, it wasn't about pure solving problems together. It was about Joe selling their consulting service to Sally.
Yeah.
And also at the same time, we introduced, and there's some great go-to-market, big Harvard case study maybe, but the point is we introduced education. So we built courses. That sounds like a good idea, sort of. It's a good idea. We get addicted to the suites. So schools, courses that have live components that start on a deadline. Class starts January 1st.
Yeah.
That's great for urgency, and that's great for demand gen. But that's not great for retention, because if you join to take a class, once the class is over, you might leave.
Yeah.
And so this thing, I remember laughing to myself. We had an NPS of 75 in 2019. And which, and I calculated correctly, so I know what that means. It means that there was one or two detractors and everybody was raving fans, and people never quit, and then people, and now in 2024 and 2025, it's an e-commerce thing, and it's very transactional, and that's what. So when I think about the chapters of Pavilion. The new chapter began when I hired our new president, Rich Gardner, who was the first Boston chapter head. And that is the beginning of the new chapter, and that new chapter is really just going back to the roots. So this will be the beginning of the final, not the final, but the turbulence will settle, and we will get back to what we were always supposed to be. But it was a period of, from 2022, I would say, to 2025, we were, as Churchill might say, in the wilderness.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned Rich. He's president now.
Yeah.
I guess you're somewhat less hands-on, at least from the day-to-day operational running of the business. Is that correct? Or is that the thinking?
That's the idea.
That's the idea, right?
Yeah, and I want to be.
Yeah.
And I want to have the time to do this.
Yeah.
And I want to have the time to go. It had been... Again, you don't know that you're on the wrong track when you're on the wrong track. You always believe you're on the right track. Of course, that's sort of the nature of humanity. But my days, if you look at my calendar today versus 6 months ago or 9 months ago, 9 months ago, it was way more internal meetings, way more internal one-on-ones, and way less talking to members. And if you look at my calendar today, it almost feels dramatically unscalable. I'm spending all my time talking to members. I'm doing renewal calls and one-on-one calls, and I'm going to dinners. And yes, I'm creating content like this, but it's all about being face-to-face with the market and outward-facing, as opposed to looking at dashboards and getting mad at... I had disconnected myself from the community in a certain way. I was still working hard, but I was trying to push through my executive team. And I wasn't leading by example, and my executive team was also not particularly interested in connecting with the community.
Interesting. Okay.
They were interested in architecting an e-commerce digital business. And they didn't really like talking to our members.
Yeah, there's a bit of a disconnect there in terms of your vision and...
Yes. And community, again, we can talk about anything you want, but community is a craft business. It doesn't mean it can be a very big business. But it's a craft business. People that use the word scale too much at my company are probably the wrong people.
Yeah, I totally hear you. Obviously, I kind of started my SaaS career at Stack Overflow, and at the heart of the business was community. And Joel and Jeff, the people who were running the business at the executive level, were very cognizant of that. And the focus was first and foremost maintaining the balance. Use the word balance in the
Yes.
community, and there was always like tension, a Stack Overflow between the moderators of the website and were they being too harsh with the rest of the people interacting in the community, were they not? But there was always like a very deliberate effort to maintain the right balance and ensure that nothing upsets the community, because we knew that the entire business, the revenue model, was built on the community.
Exactly.
And in some way, maybe Stack Overflow as well ended up losing its way there.
Yeah, but Stack Overflow became a much bigger business than Pavilion.
It did. Different mechanics there. And yeah, it's very interesting because it was, I think, built, maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but from day one, it was built to be an online business, which essentially enables it to arguably scale infinitely.
Yeah.
Whereas Pavilion, again, having been one of the early members, you cannot replicate, I don't think, the value you got out of it. Those, again, intimate is the right word, in-person dinners where you can open up and say exactly what's in your mind versus perhaps having the same conversation on Slack with literally like thousands of people looking at you, don't even know who they are, right?
Yes.
So something doesn't quite translate, from like the offline experience, which I cannot compare it to anything else, to the online experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think the online experience can be very valuable too. I think that there's an orientation in terms of the people running the community that has to be interested in the members. And I think if you're just looking at user engagement data and dashboards and reports, and I think you're missing the humanity. And I think so for example, Slack, people talk about, Slack is a tool and it can be useful or not useful depending on who's using it.
Yeah.
The Pavilion Slack today is getting better and better and better. Why? Because me and a few other people, but especially me, are in there every day answering questions.
Yeah.
Being present. It's not. Some part of me wanted to have this idea, and I think it remains to be seen. This is a very common trope that you need to be able to step away from the business and have it run so that it's not so much about you.
Yeah.
At the same time, though, we've got all these tools like this podcast, where the idea of you is more scalable than it's ever been. And, I don't know how many people think that they know me personally by listening to my podcast or reading my content, but it's a lot. So it seems to me that maybe that's really terrible advice. And maybe, I need to lean more into being present and being helpful and being around. And maybe it doesn't take me so much time to be active in Slack and at least stimulate things so that people can see leadership by example and see that I genuinely care and that I'm not, clipping coupons somewhere in Bali and, thanking everybody for their money.
Well, look, firstly, let me just clarify. I do find a lot of value in the online experience in Pavilion. I'll give you two examples. One is the educational piece, actually. I've done a bunch of the courses and, some are good, some could be excellent, actually. So there's that. So when you started the educational piece, I was like, oh, wow, this actually makes a lot of sense. The other one, though, and this is probably, goes against what I said a minute ago, as the community scaled, maybe you lost that sort of experience, or maybe not lost, but it didn't directly translate to the experience we had at the dinners. But what it meant is that you had huge reach. And from a hiring standpoint, it has been absolutely phenomenal. I'll give you the example. One of my portfolio companies that I had invested in a while ago was looking to hire a director or VP sales, I can't remember right now, in San Francisco, where my network is somewhat sparse. I do have connections there, but not as many. And they're based out there, by the way. They couldn't find anyone. I posted in Pavilion, literally 15 minutes later, had like a bunch of people raise their hands, and one of them not only ended up interviewing quite successfully, she ended up getting the job.
Let's go.
Power of the community,
Your
right?
job today is because of Pavilion.
Yeah, exactly. That is true as well. Different mechanism, but the same dynamic. I was on the receiving end this time,
I think there's a lot of that's, because by the way, first of all, it is the nature of my mind that there are 3 different or 4 different conversations happening concurrently in my brain at any one time. So there's an observer, there's a skeptical observer that's sort of deprecating, and then there's like the earnest enthusiast. So the skeptical deprecator is a little harsh, right? We've changed a lot of people's lives. It's 10,000 people. It's all over the world. I live in Barcelona. There's a chapter there. There's a chapter in London. There's a chapter in Munich. There's a chapter in Denver. It's freaking incredible, right? It's truly incredible. And so that's a great thing, and I should be more proud of that.
Yeah.
At the same time, there has been a moderation in terms of my enthusiasm about the quality of the experience. But the benefit because the other thing that's happened is while we've taken our eye slightly off the ball, there are other communities today.
Yeah.
And in fact, our friend Max feels like he runs a direct competitor, actually. I feel like GTM Fund is a direct competitor. They do dinners, and I think there's people that pay to be members of the Slack community that aren't investors.
Yes, you can syndicate deals that way. That's kind of the value. You basically can either be an LP or you can pay to get access to their deal flow and choose to invest.
Right, but really you're paying access for the Slack and to go to the dinner.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. So, and they're an investor in Pavilion, so it is what it is.
Yeah.
But I will say that he's been much clearer and consistent about his strategy than we've been about ours. And then there's Exit 5 for marketing.
Okay.
Run by Dave Gerhardt, and there's CMO Coffee Talk, run by Matt Hines. And there's this guy, Warren Zena, that I hadn't heard of before, but runs the CRO Collective.
I know, okay. Yeah.
And then there's this guy, AJ Gandhi, who runs the GTM Leadership Society.
Okay.
While I haven't been super focused on like clear ICP, really nailing the value prop, there have been many competitors that have emerged.
Yeah.
And so you think, and I asked ChatGPT, why should Pavilion win? What is our right to win? Well, there are a lot of competitors, but none of them have the reach that we do.
No.
And none of them have the globality that, I don't even know if that's a word, but it is true. We have to lean into that fact that you can land in London and have 400 allies.
Yeah.
And you can land in Denver and have 200 allies. And you can land in San Francisco and have 600 allies in a way that is not possible through any other community. And so to your point, yes, there are drawbacks of having this large, group where you're not sure who's posting what and how much to trust people. But there are ways around that. But there's nothing that beats the idea that you can land in literally any city in the world.
Yeah.
And there are at least a couple of people that are members of Pavilion. And if I do a great job of convincing people, this is what we believe when you join Pavilion. So if you don't want to believe this, don't join. But if you do join, we expect you to believe these things. Then all of a sudden you have a shared, people. Is it a religion? Is it? I mean, you're a cult follower, right? I'm sure you're a CrossFit kind of person, right? You do. You have belief systems, whether it's about physical fitness or whatever it is. And those are powerful things, you know. If you're a CrossFit person, aren't you a CrossFit person? You were a CrossFit.
I was. Too many injuries.
You're a passionate CrossFit person.
I was.
Right?
Yeah.
And wherever you go, there's a CrossFit gym somewhere in the world. And when you drop in to do your WOD, it's like those are my people.
Yeah, they're welcoming.
Yeah, and you have a shared language, and you know that you agree on certain things, including the wrong way to do pull-ups. But that's a separate conversation.
Oh boy. Okay.
But you know what I mean?
I do know exactly what you mean.
That is something that I need to lean into more.
Yeah.
And that one of the things I've been telling Pavilion members is join more than one chapter.
Yeah.
There's no cost. If you travel between London and Albania or Greece or Barcelona, be a member of multiple communities. That'll show you how global this thing is.
I kind of feel that happens. Not necessarily joining multiple chapters, but I've had so many times where someone reaches out on Slack and says, "Hey, I'm in London. Would you like to grab coffee?" And the answer 9 out of 10 times is yes. And the only reason why it might be a no is because the diaries don't align. But the rest is taken care of. You say we aligned. You know what the conversation is going to be like. You know what type of person you're going to meet, and it's always great. So that kind of I feel happens a lot. I'll be the first one to admit, though, I have not been as good as doing the same going into, say, the US. So maybe I should actually do that. Next time I'm in the US, I should just ping people and be like, hey, let's hang out.
And there's this member directory thing that's like a Google map that you can scroll, and it changes the search as you move the map. So you can be like, I'm going to Dubuque. I don't even know where Dubuque is, but if you were to go there, you can figure out who's a member.
Can we talk a little bit more about where you're going next? One of the things that I thought was very cool is this kind of media arm, if you will, that you just launched, and some of the content that's been put out has been just incredible, right? I'm thinking predominantly the latest one I read was Cassie's.
Wasn't that great?
It was.
She's so right, by the way.
She is, yeah.
And I've talked to so many companies. She nailed it.
By the way, just one of the, this is kind of a side comment, but one of the best CRO school electives was Cassie's.
Storytelling with data.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's the best.
Yeah.
She's been Cassie Young Primary Ventures. She's been an incredible ally, and she wrote, for those if you're watching or listening, she wrote an article talking about the coming retention apocalypse.
Yeah.
For AI first companies that have been pulled. Everybody's buying. Everybody's in the market. They're being pulled into POC conversations, calling it ARR. And it's not ARR, and they haven't invested in customer success or customer support. And there's going to be this crisis where, and I'm telling you, I'm on text threads with people where people are saying, our tool can do anything, so sales are great, but then nobody's sure how to use it once it's installed or implemented, and we have to invest in customer success. So everything Cassie has been saying is totally correct.
What is your take? We'll come back to the future of Pavilion, but on that note, what is your take on this particular post and the idea that a lot of the so-called annual recurring revenue is not necessarily annual recurring revenue? Some people say, and I've seen investors who say, who cares, is growing, they'll figure it out. And I kind of tend to share more Cassie's viewpoint, which is, at some point, you have to pay the bill, right?
I think I agree with you. I'm an operator, right? What do I think? I think we have to remember that our incentives are not aligned with investors. And Harry Stebbings or Jason Lemkin or whomever, their incentives are not aligned. That doesn't mean they're wrong, and they're certainly not bad people or doing anything wrong. They must be in the winners, and they must tell founders to grow faster. And it's power law. And to be in the winner, to be in Wiz, to be in Databricks, to be in OpenAI trumps a million failures. That's why I think people don't really understand. They still don't. They understand conceptually, but then the math of it eludes their grasp. It doesn't matter that 9 out of 10 companies went out of business. It doesn't matter. What matters is, were you in Databricks?
Yeah.
If you were in Databricks, people don't understand 40 billion. It's like, well, they had one winner that was 40 billion. Like, do you understand how much bigger 40 billion is than 10 million? It's a lot bigger. It's a lot bigger. So my point is, as an operator, that doesn't help us because we don't all get to be in Databricks. And I think that there's a bunch of companies, and there's these young enthusiastic founders that are just after the generation of young enthusiastic founders from 2021.
Yeah.
And so they think that they're special and different, just like the people from 2021 thought that they were special and different. And I don't think anybody's that special or that different. And I think that enterprises need customer success and customer support and enablement and implementation. You could call it forward deployed engineers. By the way, forward deployed engineers, that's CS.
Yeah.
Like forward deployed customer success, that's CS.
Yeah.
Like it's all.
Call it what you want to call it.
What you want to call it. You need somebody to teach you how to use the thing after you bought it.
Yeah.
And if you don't invest in that, I think that there is going to be a huge crisis. And I think that there's a lot of money that has flowed into trials, whether you call it a POC, whatever you call it.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but I think that that's also going to happen for all the vibe coding platforms. I don't. Do you use every day?
Not every day, no.
Do you use Lovable, Replit, Bolt?
I don't, not every day. My wife has started using Lovable, which is interesting.
Regularly?
She's working on a project that she's chosen to use it, so I guess it's regular at the moment.
People that use Lovable like it more than Replit or Bolt, but I tried using Replit. Now, the correct response is, Sam, these things are getting so much better every 6 months.
Yeah.
That you might not think it's a habit today, but it will become a habit.
Yeah.
But my point is, I think that habits are actually difficult to form.
True.
And we need people to mandate on how we use these technologies. And that tends to be customer success or customer support.
Do you think there's a, Lovable, Replit, these companies operate more like a B2C.
They are B2C companies.
B2C business. So, and to me, the idea of customer success, at least the way I think you and I think of it, it's a B2B kind of concept, right? Where you can schedule a session with a team that you've just onboarded, and educate them on how to get the most value out of the product, maybe even deliberately guide them towards, the eureka moment where the product makes so much sense that
Yes.
the habit is formed on that call. You're like, okay, I cannot live without it, right? I don't know if that scales, or at least not in the conventional way, when you're talking about millions of people arguably signing every
No,
week.
it's not the same thing at all, but it's the same basic principle,
Right.
Which is that one way or the other, you need to form the habit of the people using this thing every day, and not just trying it once and then disappearing.
Yeah.
And that is why at the end of every prompt that you give ChatGPT, it asks you to do another prompt.
Yeah.
And by the way, sometimes it works.
Yeah.
Often it works. So ChatGPT, even though I think it hallucinates. It seems to hallucinate more than Claude, but I use ChatGPT every single day. So
Yeah.
OpenAI has won my wallet in that way, and I'm not canceling ChatGPT. But I did try to build a video game on Replit, and that didn't work at all.
Do you think it's interesting with ChatGPT, I had a slightly different take on the prompts. I never thought of it as like ChatGPT being nice and saying, hey, maybe you can kind of polish on the prompt and get more value out of it. I always saw it as a way for OpenAI to kind of ensure that you hit your daily credits as a free user, so then you can upgrade, right? The more prompts, the more interaction you have, you're more likely to exceed your limit. And then, if you want to continue, you need to upgrade. I always saw it that way, because some of the prompts are like, maybe I'm writing the wrong prompts, I don't know. But I'm kind of, on the fence whether they're well-intentioned, the follow-up questions.
I think I don't know that I agree about token usage. I think that their intention is be ubiquitous, be everywhere, get everybody using us every day, and then we will have pricing power and we can make money.
Yeah. Would you not say they already do? I kind of feel like, at least as far as the mindshare side of things go, everyone, when you think of
AI, you think of ChatGPT.
Exactly, yeah.
They do. It's just the question is there's still math involved. They have $1.4 trillion in data center commitments, and they do $13 billion in revenue. And on that $13 billion, they lose 20. They lose, I don't know, 8 billion, 10 billion.
Yeah.
So that, and maybe more. If you look at their cash flow projections relative to Anthropic is much more B2B focused and is projecting to be cash flow positive much sooner. Sam Altman's point of view is, be everywhere, as my friend Austin would say, be maximum risk on, like do every single thing you can do, push a new release into some new vertical every day and spend as much money as you can. And then maybe when the dust settles in 2035, there's, they can start printing money.
How do you think this pans out? Because I totally see what he's saying, but at the same time,
I've read a lot of books.
Yeah.
As many people have. And my experience with hubris is it tends to end poorly. So I think AI is real. I think Gen AI is real. I think OpenAI is an incredible company. And I think that they're overextended. And I think that, I think that the future is bright for AI and for the world that they've helped create, very much so. And I think that I can't square the circle of how much money they owe people and what that implies about their revenue growth. And at some point, somebody's going to say, yeah, no, I'm not lending you any more money.
Yeah. Slight course correction in terms of topic.
Sure. That's what editing's for.
Yeah. No. This follows on nicely, but I was curious on the subject of AI and going back to some of the previous kind of conversations around go-to-market. One of the things that we're I don't know if you're seeing this, or at least the narrative is such, and you're like perfectly positioned to say if this is true or in fact is more fiction. But everyone keeps on talking about the size of teams decreasing in companies, right? Everyone is talking about the next billion company is going to be a one-man band. Go-to-market teams are decreasing. At the same time, we're saying, well, actually, you need to invest, even with AI, you need to invest in customer success. So, the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. But I guess two questions. Firstly, do you agree? Do you think we are going to see go-to-market teams shrink significantly? And what does this mean, I suppose, for go-to-market leadership? And from there, what does it mean for the future of Pavilion in a way, right? Because again, the only reason why you have such a big and vibrant community is because there has been a lot of go-to-market leaders. I'm thinking 10 years from now, if we're saying, we would need half or like a third of the number of AEs, let's say, or BDRs, and therefore less people to manage them. That kind of directly translates to let's go to market leaders, right? Like, how do you think about all this? I
Here's what I think. There will be fewer people, but the requirements, remember I said drivers versus passenger, the requirements for people with executive function are higher. There might be fewer AEs, but there are going to need to still be strategists and leaders. And strategists and leaders now have more tools than they had before. The need for a chief of staff is slightly lower if you have AI to bounce strategy ideas off of and to ask, why should we win and what should we be on the lookout for? So go-to-market leadership and executive function, I think, will be more important. Will everybody be if everybody were to become a CEO, I'd be a little bit more bearish on Pavilion. But I don't think everybody's going to be a CEO. I think there's just going to be smaller teams. But the teams that are in place are going to they're going to have very high expectations about the quality of their decision making and how they solve problems. And they're going to need context for that. And context is going to come from community. So I think a couple of things play dramatically in our favor. I think one is what I just said, which is that there's going to be smaller teams with higher expectations, and those people are going to have to be this very difficult mix of strategy and tactics, digital proficiency and technical skills with the ability to communicate to the point of, podcasts like this. And I think that people will need places to go to develop, learn those skills, and to stress test different solutions. And that's where community comes into play. The second thing is, with the ubiquity of, as you might say, AI slop, and it's everywhere. You can look at every website, every LinkedIn post, every time you see that structure of, that's not aggression, that's candidness, or whatever. It's not this, it's that, The phrase "no fluff," that's a telltale sign.
But the kicker is, here's the kicker.
Yeah, exactly. These structures, you can tell you're going to feel, as we feel right now, that you are not sure what's real and what's not real.
Yeah.
And you are going to be craving authentic human experiences. And that is why Pavilion is going to be more relevant than ever, because we are going to, for example, next year, tying it to where we're going, we are doubling the number of salon dinners that we host.
Okay.
So we host about 200 a year, 150, and we're going to be doubling that. And our goal is that if you're going to be a member of Pavilion, we want to get you to a curated in-person experience underpinned by our belief system within the first 90 days of your membership.
Makes a lot of sense. And is this just on that note, is this kind of your vision in a way, or is it also a reflection of what the community is craving?
I think it's both.
Yeah.
And I think it's, but I think people, my catchphrase, I suppose, is that content is a commodity and context is at a premium. Can you learn, some methodology? Can you learn MEDDIC or BANT or or spiced, by Googling chat or by using ChatGPT? Yes, you can. And it's going to be a good answer.
Yeah.
So, but you're going to still have a thing in the back of your head. I need to talk about this with somebody. And that is where a conversation with a peer is going to be critical. And the other part the point that I make is, I can walk up to you not knowing you on the streets of London and say, "Hey, mister, do you have a qualification methodology for a B2B enterprise sales cycle?" And you can give me the best answer. That's one scenario. Scenario two is, I ask you, but I know that you run a qualification methodology consulting business. And I know that you have a vested interest in pushing me towards a certain direction.
Yeah.
And then the third scenario is, I know that you have no conflicts and you are simply my peer and you are offering that advice without any economic incentive or interest. And in each of those, it can be exactly the same answer. But I can't trust the first two, and I can trust the third. Yeah. And that is why content is not, it's useful. We have to know stuff, but I can't trust it. Yeah. And trust is going to be at a maximal premium in our new world.
Yeah. Let's go back to this idea of where Pavilion is going. I mentioned, obviously, the new sort of direction you've taken with a media outlet, if you will.
Sure.
I guess I'm seeing where you might be heading with this, but what was the original motivation to actually start this?
The media top line.
Yes, top line and, curated posts, having like a number of people that are regular on it's not just you, because
it's
again,
not.
you've been such a prolific voice, but now you're kind of pulling people from the community alongside yourself who have also been very vocal, if you will, but also have like strong opinions about certain topics, right? They're definitely drivers, right? They're not observers,
That is part of, so yeah, that's part of the direction. The direction is that we must have a point of view.
Mm-hmm.
Now it doesn't, I think that we've heard a lot from the influencers of the previous era.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we need voices from operators and from people that have operated. And I think storytelling and interesting insights and a point of view is at a maximum premium, as I said. When it comes to content, if you're going to put content out, it has to be unique. It has to be clear that it is interesting. To be interesting, to be information, as Claude Shannon would tell us, like it has to be different than what you expect. That's sort of the definition of information in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
If everything were what you expect, then it wouldn't be news.
True.
So that's going to mean that it has to piss some people off, or at least it has to provoke some kind of response.
Yeah.
And again, what happened? If you look at the chapters of Pavilion, the first chapter of Pavilion, oh man, did we have a point of view? I had the Bill of Rights on the website. Mm-hmm. It's like, you deserve severance. You deserve, this is the information that you're entitled to if you're going to join as a CRO. And that was empowering to people. People were excited about that. And I'm sure there were a lot of people that were pissed off about that I was giving away the playbook that they had so preciously guarded. And then there was a period of, this sort of pseudo scale, right? Where it was like dumb automation filled the pipes of everything that Pavilion did. We would send stupid emails. Right now, you know how many emails we send a week to our members? 30 emails.
A week?
A week.
Jeez.
Yeah. Okay. It's horrible. Why?
Yeah.
Why? I can tell you why. It's a very interesting, case study in terms of incentives and alignment. But the point is, it's not curated. You go to our website and it says the #1 B2B community for go-to-market. Like, gag me with a chainsaw. There's no point of view that's embedded in our website. It is blah, right?
Yeah.
And it's all just like blah.
Yeah.
And with good, there's nobody evil. We were trying to dumb it down for some theoretical corporate audience.
Yeah.
And so it's all back to the roots at scale, bigger, which is, okay, top line's going to have a point of view. We're going to say stuff on the podcast that you're not going to like or you're going to disagree with.
Yeah.
And people are going to write stuff that you're going to disagree with or is going to provoke a response. And good. And this is going to be a place where interesting voices are celebrated, even if they're sometimes controversial. And there's going to be a story on our website. It's not going to say the #1 anything. It's going to say the new website, which will launch, in a couple of weeks, is the first hero statement is GTM is a grind. Mm-hmm. Because it's true. It is.
True. Yeah.
And it's going to tell a story. I keep coming back to, because this year I watched, I'd never watched it start to finish all in a row, Mad Men.
Okay.
And, we think that it's difficult positioning one call recorder versus another. Like Don Draper was selling laundry detergent and toothpaste and coffee and stuff to clean your floor and cigarettes, like things that are commodity items. And he was provoking a psychological, emotional response that you had a preference for Marlboro versus Lucky Strikes when, like, I can't tell the, I don't smoke enough, but
yeah.
I
Do you
can't.
Smoke?
No,
you don't.
So it's not enough,
Clearly.
But I've had a cigarette once in a while with a cocktail. But my point is, like, Marvis is out there getting people to buy premium toothpaste and having, I have a Rimowa suitcase and I have a feeling about that. And yet when we go to B2B marketing, it's like nobody has a feeling about anything.
Yeah.
And so my point is, this is all a long-winded way of saying, like, things that a story that captures a response and a point of view on the world that is not just about these are the features of this product.
Yeah.
That is one part of where we are taking Pavilion.
Awesome. Where can people keep up with you? I think most people know where to find you on LinkedIn. As I said earlier, you're now a legit influencer, dare I
guess I
say.
am.
120,000
go.
people.
That's a whole
But
nother
where
story.
else can they keep up with you? Top line, the content that you guys are putting up.
I mean, LinkedIn, well, you can find Top Line on YouTube, Spotify, anywhere you get your podcasts. You can Slack me on Pavilion if you're a member. You can email me, sam@joinpavilion.com. Anywhere you want. I'm somewhat easy to find. There are a lot of Sam Jacobs in the world.
Yeah. Amazing, Sam. Thanks so much. I know you're really busy. Appreciate you making
Thanks
time
for
to sit
having
down
me.
and chat.
Great to see you.
Awesome. Thanks.